all present voting yes and no no's. It appears that we have a finding for emergency meeting.
141st person.
Thank you, Richard. So now we move on into our meeting, and we are at the point on the agenda where we will accept public comments during this. Anyone wishing to speak regarding any public comments, if you would state your name and who you are affiliated with, if that is applicable, so that we can notate all the public comments.
Hi, this is Paul Rafelson. I'm an attorney representing a group of Amazon sellers, no particular affiliation, and I wanted to thank you very much for holding the meeting today.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
I think it's really important as you go through this process to have an opportunity to hear the Amazon seller experience and what that is, and learn a little bit more about who these people are. The other day I was speaking to a husband and wife team in rural Colorado, very excited, just launched a new Amazon business maybe less than a year. They went through an academy. The Amazon seller community likes to help each other out. They do the YouTube videos and they teach each other and how to make money. And it allows them this freedom to live in anywhere they want. And so this couple lived in rural Colorado, and they were just making a really nice living. Nothing lavish, but just very happy and very excited about the business. But as we went further on in the conversation, what they came to realize is that this sort of realization suddenly that there is this tax issue. Unfortunately, put a little bit of fear into the picture. You see, they don't actually oppose the idea of a tax. Nobody does. None of these sellers, I can say, none of the sellers I have spoken with oppose the idea of collecting the tax, and they're not going to suggest that you use tax or anything of that certain nature. But they just simply realize very quickly that what is being asked of them is impossible. They can't afford to comply with what you're asking them to do. Not because the tax burden is higher, but the cost of compliance as we go down this road is too big for that. You see, in Amazon third-party land, you can be a multi-million-dollar seller. You can make a couple $1 million. Sell a couple $1 million, but they don't actually make that much money in the process. By the time the fees are deducted, by the time all of the costs get sold and all the expenses, they're making a living that's basically under threat, not intentionally, but maybe due to a lack of understanding of what goes on in the Amazon community. And that's probably why this is maybe the most well-attended MPC call in history. You're hearing so many beeps, is because they're all very interested in what's going on, and some of them do want to share their stories with you and tell you, what it is like to be an Amazon seller, and so that you understand that what is happening, what potentially may happen, is the burdens that are being put upon them may end up resulting in the ending of a budding industry, where people can thrive in rural communities. They don't have to live next to the city. And that may be put to a stop real fast, where all you're left with are really the top Amazon sellers, ones that maybe, I don't know what the focus is on this, but that's where you're left. That's what you're left with. And so because of that, it was really important for us to get that message out. At the same time, I've spoken to lots of folks in the local business community because I'm interested in what their perspective is on it, the local business perspective. And, it's not a surprise. I spoke to the founder of one of the most well-known home supply stores in the state of Connecticut, and he was telling me, listen, I sit above, in my office, it sits above the floor, where people come into my store and look at everything from appliances to hardware for their cabinets, to windows and lamps and things. People come in, they use my salespeople to get all the information they need, and literally while they're speaking to them, they're on the phone, tapping it into Amazon, buying it, tax-free. He sees it all the time. And he wants to know, when is it going to end? Because he doesn't have a lot of time left. It's killing his business. And so when I speak to you about whether this is the approach that makes the most sense, I'm simply saying it from the perspective of, wouldn't it be better if the marketplace collected all the tax, 100% of the tax, not just ones where they do the fulfillment, but all of it, the entire marketplace? Wouldn't it be better for the state to receive that revenue today, before the holidays, to save a budding small business industry where collectively they're a large industry. There's hundreds of thousands of these small businesses in America, maybe more. Nobody really knows, but we know it's a lot. At the same time, wouldn't it be better to protect your local economies, your local businesses, so they don't have to go through another holiday season at a disadvantage? And keep in mind, a lot of these Amazon sellers, they're in your state. They're your economy. This is why these people are not on the welfare programs and things like that. This is what keeps them above water from falling through the cracks. It's an amazing phenomenon. And we really, as states, need to tread carefully to protect that and not do something that might harm it. And with that in mind, I want to call your attention to what's going on in the court. The Supreme Court, South Dakota, Alabama, how many states among you are bringing something to challenge the court decision, physical presence? South Dakota at the furthest point. Remember the saying, the history repeats itself. Learn from your mistakes, history repeats itself. Remember, Quill is a decision that is based on the idea of a fear of burdening a budding industry at the time, the catalog industry, and the court's concern about whether interstate commerce would be unduly burdened if they didn't do something to sort of draw a line and protect this industry. And at the time when the court is about to consider that again, you have to understand what that looks like optically. I'm not telling you I'm not saying, I'm just telling you.
Hi, Paul. If you could wrap up in about a minute so we can give everybody...
I'm wrapping it.
Thank you.
So I am simply asking that you consider all of these factors about your economy, about what the implications are of asking hundreds of thousands of people to comply with a law that really could be resolved under current law, because South Carolina is not the only state that can do this, by asking one party to do it. One party. Not hundreds of thousands incurring $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 compliance bills. The cost of filling out the forms, it's a real cost for these people, and it's going to put them out of business. Income taxes, franchise taxes, sales taxes, they can't do it. So I ask you, as you consider this today, to please keep that in mind. And as I sign off, I do know that there are other sellers on this call, and some of them have expressed interest. If they're still interested, feel free to come and tell your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
We are going to try and limit these comments to about 3 to 4 minutes apiece, because we have so many people wanting to make comments, and in order to be fair to everyone, we do need to limit our discussion here. But thank you so much for sharing, and we will take the next public comment at this time.
Yes, if I might join in. Yes, I'm sorry. Hi.
If you don't mind, I'll go real quick. Sorry, I'll just be a few minutes.
Okay, sure.
My name's Matthew. I'm in Texas. So I started.
What's your last name, Matthew?
Turner.
Turner. Okay.
So I started selling on Amazon about 4 or 5 years ago. I had about $600, and I've grown that to this year. My revenue is going to be about $1.2 million, and I'm actually a mechanical engineer. I started this while I was in school, and I'm pretty much just waiting to see what happens with all this before I decide what to do with moving forward. Because I make plenty of money to sustain myself and my family, but with my Amazon business. But this whole sales tax issue could be a really, really, really huge problem. And I've talked with lots of sellers. Pretty much no one has a clue what to do with it. The majority of people just say, "Oh, I collect in my state. That's it." Even I've talked to sellers that are doing $60 million a year revenue, and they have no plans to change over to collecting in every state that have Nexus. So honestly, the selling community, we really just have no idea how to deal with this. And personally, I have no time to figure out how to deal with it, nor the funds to pay an accountant or a lawyer thousands of dollars to figure it out for me. So just getting some clarity on the whole situation, giving us more time would be very beneficial. But like I said, I personally think that Amazon really should be the ones to collect this. The number one reason being that when you send your inventory to them, at best you partially own it because they essentially can decide whatever they want to do with it. I mean, I got a return just a couple days ago from an order that was 11 months old. They just take the money and give it to the customer, and you're stuck with it. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it pretty much. So, basically at best, we're only partial owners when we come into their ecosystem and they control everything. And from the point of view of the individual third-party seller, it just seems to me to make the most sense to have Amazon collected. They have the infrastructure built, they have the lawyers, they have the accountants, they have the employees to figure out how to comply. Individual third-party sellers do not. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to everybody.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, ma'am.
If I might join in, hello. I was the person who tried to jump in a minute ago. First of all, my name is Sylvia Dion. I am a CPA and the founder and tax management partner of a state and local tax consulting firm named Prieto Dion Consulting Partners. A significant focus of mine is dealing with Amazon, FBA, and other e-commerce sellers. 80% of my client base are Amazon FBA sellers located outside of the United States. But my focus really very much is with international Amazon and other e-commerce sellers. Spent a lot of time speaking with sellers from outside of the country that are selling on Amazon that have their product in the Amazon fulfillment network. By and large, I will say that I find my non-U.S. clients to be very concerned about being in compliance. They really want to be in compliance, and they really want to do what is the right thing here with respect to the U.S. tax laws. Now, you can imagine U.S. sales tax being complex for U.S. sellers. It is even that much more complex for international sellers. So I spend a lot of time, discussing Nexus, explaining that our states are independent sovereign governments, are not subject to the tax treaties that our federal government enters into. There are a lot of sellers international sellers who immediately say, I'm from a country that has a treaty, therefore I shouldn't need to deal with this. And of course, I need to explain to them that that's not the case. So my request today is to the board is to, please allow us to have more time to submit applications. As you can imagine, within the last few weeks, I've been inundated by international sellers that are looking for guidance in this area. And I take the time to spend about an hour with each one, really explaining, once again, the impact of tax treaties that only applies for federal taxes. It's not a state. States are sovereign. The states have their own rules and regulations. The whole concept of nexus. The other thing with regard to the international sellers is whenever we start dealing with a new client from another country, generally they have not ever registered for an EIN. So before we can even do anything in terms of, applying to the MTC for the amnesty, we actually have to take the time to obtain an employer identification number for that particular out-of-country legal entity. The IRS generally only allows obtain one EIN per day. So at the most, if I've got 10 clients, 10 new international Amazon FBA clients that need an EIN before they can even move forward with the process, I'm going to need to make 10 separate phone calls to the IRS International Taxpayer Assistance Line to obtain those EINs. And once again, I have a restriction on myself. I have a restriction imposed on me by the IRS in terms of how many EINs I can obtain for an international seller, for international sellers. So that is absolutely slowing down the process. So once again, from my standpoint today, I represent, by and large, many international Amazon FBA sellers who are, first of all, not familiar with the workings of U.S. taxation, but the process is just a little bit longer for them. One reason being that we need to obtain an EIN for them before we can move forward. And once again, they really want to be in compliance. Therefore, I respectfully ask the board to, please extend the time period for the acceptance of applications. I know that would be extremely helpful to many of the international Amazon sellers that I'm working with right now.
So I believe we're ready for our next public comment.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, sir.
My name is David Stanton. I'm in California. I'm a 6-year-old man that lost my job a couple of years ago, and I applied for Amazon selling account and family. I'm very concerned about the tax implications that are going to be levied with the MTC program. It seems a bit rushed, and we're all trying to make sense of it. There are community groups of 20,000 sellers plus on Facebook that have all voiced the same opinions, and we all applaud Paul for what he's doing to raise this issue because we all want to pay taxes. We want to be in compliance. But we feel this rush and urgency is really missing the mark because we don't own our inventory. Amazon destroys my inventory regularly. If it doesn't sell, if they get returns that are not, acceptable, I don't have control of where they send it around. Their reports are terrible, telling me where my inventory is. It changes day to day. So for a small seller like myself that supports my family of 5, this would destroy my business, and I'd have to, take up a new occupation. And then we're talking about thousands of sellers. Amazon reports that half of their SKUs are by sellers. Half of their business is by third-party sellers like us. So they really need to be the ones on the hook here. They really need to pay the tax. And we are all happy to pay tax. Believe us, we want to make sure it goes down. But by targeting us individually, it's only going to create chaos, ruin businesses, and destroy what has been a fledgling small business movement in this country for the last 40 years. So we urge the MTC to think more thoroughly about how Amazon treats us as sellers. It might look like on paper I have $1.2 million in sales, but I'll be lucky to keep $75,000 as profit to support my family because of their fees. It's a difficult marketplace. So I just hope that they don't levy this burden on the small seller. This is a small time, operation for many people to support their family. And the MTC is really aggressively scaring a lot of people with this compliance stuff. So I urge them to go after Amazon. Amazon's the one that controls the inventory and where it goes. Thanks for thinking about it more thoroughly.
Thank you, David.
Hi, can I Can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. My name is Joe Jones. I'm up in New Jersey, and I just want to explain something. I do about gross sales, maybe $1.5 million on Amazon. I've been selling on Amazon for 15 years. This main issue is about FBA, okay? I think if you were to take a survey of all the sellers on Amazon, for those that are doing merchant fulfill, that are selling directly from their own locations, they're remitting sales taxes that they're responsible for. But we find it's as the other callers have said, it's virtually impossible. It's very difficult to ascertain the nexus where a particular product sold from within the Amazon fulfillment center. So we're getting bad data right there. But I think the big issue for me is that the compliance issue, the compliance costs. You're asking me to pay for, fixed costs that a big corporation has the cash to take care of. I'm not a big corporation. I'm not a Target. I can't be filing 50 state tax returns, let alone how many municipal tax returns. I'm not set up for that. I'm not a multimillionaire. And I'm only I think my rank is one of the top 1,000 Amazon sellers. I'm right around 1,000, 1,200. There's scores of thousands more like me that are in the same position. And what I've decided to do, I'm not sending in any more FBA. I want to pay my taxes, but I don't feel like, dealing with getting into trouble for this. I can't afford to pay for it. It's not worth expanding out into FBA for me. I could hire on a lot more employees, but the problem is that I can't. The only real direction I can grow my business is through the FBA channel that you guys know about, and I can't really go that way because the compliance costs are just huge. As the margins keep getting shrunk, this is a gigantic compliance burden to place upon people. So, again, just to sum up, we want to pay our taxes, but the elephant in the room here is Amazon. They're the ones who should be collecting the taxes. They have an infrastructure set up to do it. They actually do it already. And I think that their silence or their position in all of this is to push the burden onto all of us, which are smaller sellers. And that's not cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, I'd like to jump in.
Oh, go ahead.
So this is Spencer Evans. I'm with PwC, and it represents a different spectrum, and I appreciate all the comments and the emergency meeting being called. And I recognize the opportunity for some taxpayers that the window seems to be a very short window if you close it on the 17th. My concern is looking at it from a number of my clients. They just finished a 9/15 deadline. They have quarter end that they're wrapping up still at this point on the 11th of October from Q3, and some taxpayers also have a 10/15 filing deadline. So their finance and tax departments are just totally geared in the normal structure of getting all the income tax compliance done and just don't have the resources to dedicate to, hey, let me talk about indirect tax, let's talk about sales tax and use tax, and realize that this is even an opportunity for them to register in these other states and participate in the voluntary disclosure initiative. I think it's a sound request to push that deadline back, extend it for a couple more months for publicity to have its position, for the MDC to kind of just advertise this in addition to what it's already done, and for practitioners to discuss this with their clients that have business activities in the states that are using to have their inventory in warehouses, realize, I guess that really would. I understand the state's position that's going to create sales tax nexus, and I'm going to have 5 applications on all my sales because there's inventory sitting there. It's two implications that raises as well. So just from a hate waste perspective, requesting that additional time be provided so that taxpayers can participate in this. I understand, and having dealt with a number of states over the years, as a state and local tax practitioner, that the initiative is we want to bring taxpayers into compliance and help them. And I think extending the deadline helps one of the core missions of every taxing authority, whether it's from the East Coast or the West Coast. So I appreciate the time to make that.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Bill McCloskey. I'm in Minnesota. I participate in the SBA marketplace. I have a several $1 million business. I just want to point out that this approach of the MTC is a terrible, terrible outcome for the taxpayers of your state and the taxpayers of my state, Minnesota. I'm angry at Minnesota for trying to take this approach. Please read the South Carolina determination, because South Carolina has found that if Amazon had collected all of the sales tax, there would be a $9.5 million liability just for the first quarter of 2016 alone. 3 months, $9.5 million. If you ramp that out, looking at what that liability looks like for all of 2016, given Amazon's growth, it's $35 million to South Carolina. And if you look at what their growth is for 2017, it's $46 million. And South Carolina is a small state, not a particularly wealthy state. States, my state, Minnesota, will never be able to collect anything but the tiniest fraction of that money if they try to collect it by going after the 2 million individual participants in the FBA marketplace. You're going to be trying to eat grains of rice from a huge bowl of rice with chopsticks, 1 grain at a time. The proper approach for the taxpayers of your state is to go to Amazon, who is the seller. Amazon is the seller. Amazon publishes the catalog. Amazon holds the inventory, and Amazon collects the funds and holds the funds. They're a consignment seller. Amazon is the world's largest consignment store. You wouldn't allow consignment stores that are in your state to pass the burden of tax collection to the option of their consignors, and you shouldn't do the same for Amazon. And I urge all of the sellers that are on this call to pick up the phone and get a meeting with your local legislators and look at the South Carolina decision and tell your legislators that this approach of going after the small seller is costing your state and will cost your state tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in lost sales tax opportunity, because the states will only be able to collect from the very biggest of the sellers. Tiny sellers, the audit isn't going to be worth it. It's not going to be worth it. You're going to audit someone who has $1 million in sales, and you're going to find out in your state their whole tax liability for a year is $1,500. You can't go after it. There might be 200,000 sellers that owe your state $1,000. That's $20 million. You really want to go after 200,000 sellers? It doesn't make any sense. Amazon's the seller. Minnesota, just go after Amazon. They'll pay. They're already paying. Just imagine if you went into Home Depot, okay, and they started saying half the goods here are on consignment. I mean, we have the goods. We're selling them to you. And so you check out of Home Depot and you only paid sales tax on half the items. That's what Amazon is doing. You buy items from Amazon. They all come on the same credit card statement. You paid $100. You get 5 things in a box. They all come from the same facility. They arrive in your box. You paid sales tax on half. You haven't paid sales tax on the other half. Amazon is the seller. The seller in every state is responsible for collecting the tax. Please make the seller collect the tax and remit it. The seller is Amazon. We use the term FBA sellers because we've all been programmed by Amazon to believe that we're sellers, but we're not really sellers. We're consignors, and Amazon is a consignment store. We're not selling anything. Amazon's a seller. Go after them.
Thank you, Bill. Is there someone else that would like to make a public comment at this time?
My name is David Geist from Pennsylvania.
Hi, Dave. What was your last name? If
Geist.
you don't mind disclosing.
Yes, Geist. I just want to address the primary issue that this meeting has been called for, which is extending the deadline. I only found out about this on Monday and trying to make a decision by next Wednesday, which doesn't give me a lot of time. I've done all the research I can and have discovered that there, out of the millions potentially of FBA sellers out there, a very, very small percentage is even aware that this amnesty opportunity exists. If you search the Amazon seller message boards, which are accessible to anyone without a seller account, and do a search for the term amnesty, there are only 7 threads. And this is a community with millions of people that talk about everything nonstop in these threads. If the community was aware of it, they would be talking about it. So I do think that an extension, first and foremost, which is the purpose of this call, is necessary to allow sellers to educate themselves and be aware of this. Secondly, I agree with a lot of what the past sellers have said, that Amazon is in fact the retailer. We are suppliers, and therefore Amazon is the one who should be collecting the sales tax. I fully support, as a seller, I fully support sales tax being collected and remitted in every state in the union. I am not capable of doing that, but that, I know this is not the forum for that conversation. What I do want to address is the amnesty offer specifically. I've, in the past few days, educated myself on the members of the NTC, and even within this group, there's an extremely mixed message. South Carolina obviously has the same interpretation as I have, but Amazon is the retailer, and I think they've made a very clear cogent case for that. Washington and Minnesota, I know Minnesota is part of this offer. I understand that both of those states have passed laws which require Amazon to collect sales tax in coming years. And trying to put the burden both on Amazon and on the seller at the same time, and I know there are additional states that have lines on their income tax requesting that you report your own use tax for out-of-state purchases. This is a triple taxation situation to me. This could be triple collecting the same sales tax on the same item, and that's not an option. And finally, I just want to address the amnesty offer. I appreciate that the states are this opportunity. It's something I want to research further. The thing that terrifies me, obviously, is the threat of back taxes. So seeing a state like Wisconsin, which is part of this amnesty, requiring back taxes being paid, that obviously we weren't collecting at the time, the product is devastating. So I think that the states as a whole need to agree, including Wisconsin and the other states that have exemptions, to have a clear, unified proposal, or I don't think that very many sellers at all, myself included, would be tempted to take the offer in any state.
Or they might open the bag.
Thank you. It looks like additional public comments are going to need to be sent via email because we are we're running out of time here on our call. So any other person who would like to submit any comments, if you would email those comments to Richard, the email address is rcram@mtc.gov. So at this time, we're going to move on.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So if you have any additional public comments, you'll email those to Richard Cram. The email address is rcram@mtc.gov, G-O-V.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Richard, is it the appropriate time to move forward on the next agenda item?
Yes, I think we need to.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to move forward to determine whether we will extend the line for the current online marketplace seller voluntary disclosure initiative. We will need to do, I believe, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, we do need a voice vote on that as well, correct?
Yes, and I'll provide an update as to kind of where we're at this point too.
Hey, great. Thank you.
Yes. So far, we've gotten a total of 285 online marketplace sellers that have applied for voluntary disclosure relief through our initiative. It started out pretty slow initially, but today, as of today, we're getting 15 to 20 applications per day. So it's possible we could end up over 400 applications altogether by the 17th. From a staffing resource point of view, although it would be great to extend the application period, just from a MTC staffing resource point of view, we need to have sufficient time to get the applications that come in by the October 17th deadline, get those processed and moving through so that we can get states can get sellers registered as close to that December 1st deadline as possible. And my concern would be with extending the application deadline is that's going to put our staff resources in getting the applications handled in time to meet that December 1st registration deadline or as close to that as possible. So my recommendation would be that we that the states not extend that application period, although I no question there's good grounds to do so, but just kind of from a practical standpoint in terms of what we can handle, keep that deadline, and then consider in the contracts that we've been drafting, the taxpayers are given 30 days from when the state signs the disclosure agreement, and we notify the seller of that. Seller's then given 30 days to accomplish registration with the state, sign the disclosure agreement, and return it to us in order to be ready to start collecting by December 1st. So I guess my recommendation would be not to extend the application deadline, but allow some flexibility if we get to the point where we're sending out notices to the taxpayer that the state has signed the agreement, and we're within 30 days of December 1st, that in that situation, the taxpayer would be given time to get registered after December 1st within that 30 days period that we've given them notice. So, for example, if let's say we didn't get notice to the taxpayer until November 7th that the state has signed the agreement, we would give the taxpayer a 30-day period until December 7th to get registered and ready to collect sales tax. If we're able to give that 30-day notice period prior to December 1st, we would stick with the December 1st registration date. But if we can't give them 30 days before December 1st, then we'd allow the taxpayer to have an additional time so that they've got to be registered within 30 days of the date they're given notice that the state signed the agreement. But it looks like, the taxpayers are required to provide a back tax liability estimate. And from the looks of it, we've got pretty much a wide variety of applications from fairly small sellers to some very large ones. So it looks to be a very, very productive initiative. And we certainly want to make sure that those who timely get their applications in by October 7th will be able to take full advantage of it and get registered and get the back tax liability relief that the states are offering. Anyway, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Richard. Does anyone have any questions regarding Richard's recommendation? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next item on our which is to determine whether we would like to extend the deadline for the application portion. So right now, the deadline is October the 17th. As you all know, the application window was open from August 17th through October 17th. So right now, we will take a vote to see if there is interest in extending this deadline. And if the vote is yes, then we will, Richard, should we then discuss how far to extend it, or should that be part of the vote?
We could, if you wanted to, first see if folks had thoughts on that, see if there's any discussion.
Okay, great. So right now we will discuss if the vote is in favor to extend it, how long that extension period should be.
This is Adam Humes in Iowa. Richard, could you could you give me a little further explanation? You had mentioned some possibilities there if there's an extension about what we would do with respect to the 30-day window and that sort of thing. So could you go over that one more time just so I'm clear on what the options are?
Sure. Right. Currently, the draft agreements provide that once the seller's notified that the state has signed the agreement, then the seller's got 30 days to seller sign the agreement, identify themselves, get registered with the state, and send that back to the MTC so that they're ready to start collecting by December 1st. The problem I'm concerned about is if we are unable to get contracts out signed by the states in time to give at least 30 days time frame to the seller to get registered, sign the agreement, send it back to us. I think if we're giving everybody 30 days, that ought to apply across the board. So if we're giving them 30 days and that gets past that December 1st deadline, then my recommendation would be we extend the registration deadline for that seller to match up with the 30-day notice period. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's why I was when you threw in the December 1st as another deadline, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
So the goal would be to get as many as possible registered by December. The 30 days notice before that should occur. If there isn't time to give them 30 days notice before that December 1 date, then I think it'd be appropriate to extend that registration date for them.
Good morning.
Richard, this is Scott Sterling from Nebraska. About the only thing we talked about was that we could see extending the date to apply, but is it really fair to give somebody, if we extend it to the end of November or something, they don't have to report anything for December? Maybe allow an extension of the time to apply, but still require them to report taxes from the 1st of December forward.
I think the concern there is that the MTC staff may not be able to process all of the applications timely in order for the taxpayer to become registered by December 1st.
And Christian, on a protocol issue, I should have indicated that first thing we need to have is a motion to extend. Someone needs to make a motion. Then we discuss that motion and then take a vote on it.
Okay, now
got us out of line there.
Is the motion going to be to extend the application deadline, or are we still talking about the registration date?
Well, I think we could take them up as separate motions. One to extend the application date, and then the second to take up the registration date.
Okay. I guess the first thing we'll do is take a voice vote, and we will be voting on extending the application date.
Well, if someone on the committee would make a motion, we do that.
Okay, great.
There'd be an opportunity for discussion, and then following discussion, we'll take the vote.
Okay, great. Is there someone on the call that will make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we not continue in this process at all, because we're trying to put a Band-Aid on a vein, and there's an artery called Amazon that is the real issue here. I don't have Nexus in, let's say, Ohio, because I have 10 pieces of product sitting in Ohio. And to have to become a taxpayer, registered taxpayer in that state, because I have less than a case of product sitting in Ohio, is beyond ridiculous. So let's make a motion to table this whole idea. We've got to get to the bigger law, which involves Quill, and a nationwide resolution there.
I'm sorry.
I second that.
Who's speaking? Are you a member of the Nexus Committee making the motion?
No, I'm just an FBA seller.
Okay. Well, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we need a member of the Nexus Committee to make the motion.
Yes, that's right, Christy.
Well, for God's sake, make a motion that makes sense and use common sense instead of destroying an industry, people.
Randy, are you on the call?
Yes, Christy, I'm here.
Hey, Randy, would you make a motion for this, please?
So, what is
the point of this call, even? You had a preconceived agenda. It just seems like you're railroading this, and Richard just announced a proposal that was based upon the assumption that December 1st had to be the registration date, and that MTC staff to process applications. It seems like the first order of business should be discussing the registration date. This is jamming people, and I don't even understand what the point of having discussion was, given the agenda you're trying to jam through at this point.
How could you actually claim staffing resources if that's the reason we can't handle this ourselves? You're using the same reason the sellers are claiming.
Point of order. This is not public comment.
Thank you. Okay, Richard, if you can help me move in the right direction at this point.
Well, Christy, if no one's going to make a motion to extend the application, that kind of addresses that issue, and we could then move on to the registration.
Okay.
Question for you, Richard. I'm looking at an equity issue. We've had quite a few people who have already submitted applications. And if we extend the deadline and extend the registration period, are those individuals still out and remit on the December 1st deadline as agreed to? Or do we extend that deadline for equity purposes to be comparable with anybody else who's going to apply based on any discussion of extended application dates and extended registration times?
That's a great point. Thank you.
This is Richard. My thinking was sellers should be entitled to 30 days notice from when the seller is notified that the state has signed the voluntary disclosure agreement. And as long as they've been given that 30-day notice, then the December 1st registration date should stay in place. If it gets up to the point where they're not notified that the state has signed the agreement until less than 30 days before December 1st, then it would be appropriate to consider extending the registration deadline.
Richard, this is Marjorie Welch with Oklahoma Tax Commission. Is there a way for an applicant who comes in late after October 17th to waive the 30 days and still comply with the December 1st collection date?
Well, I guess that would be up to the committee. I think the issue is having the staff resources to handle the applications that are currently coming in a timely manner so that we can get them out the door.
Let me interrupt and just, this is Ellen Golden, West Virginia Tax Department. Just for discussion purposes, let me make the motion. I will let Richard restate it, but to make the motion in favor of Mr. Cram's proposal of the ability, as I understand it, the ability to extend to December 1st if the application is already in motion. I'll let you restate that, though.
My recommendation was to allow the registration date of December 1st to be extended if the seller is given, if it takes, by the time the seller is given notice that the state has signed the agreement, they need to be given 30 days beyond that date to get registered. So if that 30 days period would take them beyond December 1st, then the registration date could be extended to match up with that 30-day period.
I so move. Then the question is there a second or does it die?
We would not need a second.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello. I have a question on that motion. I'm not sure what it means. Basically, if you're saying that if an application comes in after the 17th, but MPC doesn't have the resources to process it, then they can extend the registration period to January 1st. Can you help me understand what your motion's all about?
Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, but you weren't concerned with the application deadline. This was just the registration deadline, correct? The application deadline would remain October 17th, so applications that come in after that. But if an application that came in timely by October 17th, if the seller was not given at least 30 days notice that the state had signed the agreement, the seller's registration date could be extended to match up with being given 30 days from when the state signed the agreement.
Yes, that was correct.
Hello. May I make just a quick comment? I know it's a public comment, but why don't just say you did away with the December 1st deadline? You extend the registration deadline. Say, I'm just using hypothetical, from October 17th to November 1st. Then you have to be in remitting the taxes 30 days after you sign the agreement with the state.
Hi, Nancy. This is Kathy from Collecting Warehouse. We had such good luck with your last recommendation. I wanted to chat with you for a minute.
Okay, we have someone making another call. Like if they can mute their phone, that would be great.
The Ohio Jobs Gateway had found one person.
Okay. Okay, so we have, it sounds like we have a motion, I believe, Richard.
Is 839?
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Do we need a second for that motion?
Don't need a second.
Okay, so we have a motion in place. As I understand it, the purpose of this motion is to allow the applicants a full 30-day window from the time they received the signed agreement, or from the time they signed the agreement, to allow the applicant a full 30 days to become registered, even if it goes past December 1st deadline. If we could take a voice vote, are there any questions on that particular motion?
This is Richard. Just to clarify, it's 30 days from being given notice that the state has signed the agreement.
Okay.
Not 30 days from when the taxpayer signed it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Christy, this is Stephen from Georgia. I just have a question. Do we want to put some maximum end date, like December 15th is the last possible extended date, or some end date?
Well, this 30-day window is in the agreement. It is already in the agreement that the committee has approved. So I think, and I completely understand where you're coming from, Stephen, but I personally think we're going to have a difficult time not allowing that 30 days.
So this has gone from something that sellers would have time to register for a longer period of time to something where the states and the MTC now have more time to do their work and extend their period.
Our public comment has ended. We're in a motion right now, and then we will move on to discuss the application period. Okay, so our first motion here is to determine if the applicant will be allowed 30 days from the time, 30 days in order to register.
Yeah, 30 days from being given notice that the state has signed the agreement.
Okay. Can that vote?
Sure. Alabama?
Yes.
Arkansas?
Yes.
No.
Call it. Was there a vote from Arkansas?
Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes.
Yes.
Colorado? Connecticut?
Yes.
Delaware? District of Columbia? Florida?
No, Florida's not in a position to vote to approve any extension of deadlines. We're still evaluating some of the information, but for purposes of this motion, we're not the extensions.
Georgia?
Abstain.
Hawaii? Idaho?
Idaho abstains.
Iowa?
This is Adam Humes. Yes.
Kansas?
No.
That's a no.
That's no.
Kentucky?
Yes.
Louisiana? Maryland? Massachusetts?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Michigan? Michigan, yes. Minnesota?
Yes.
Missouri? Vote for Missouri? Nebraska?
Yes.
New Hampshire? New Jersey?
No.
North Carolina? North Dakota? Oklahoma?
No.
Oregon? Rhode Island? South Carolina? South Dakota? Tennessee?
Yes.
Texas?
Yes.
Utah?
Yes.
Vermont? Washington? West Virginia? Wisconsin?
I don't.
I've got 14 yeses, 4 noes, 2 abstentions. It appears that the motion carries.
Okay, great. So now we will move and accept any motions, if there are any, to extend the application deadline. Okay, hearing none, I'm just going to ask one more time and make sure we're not missing anybody. So right now we are accepting or looking for a motion if anyone's interested in extending the application deadline.
Christie,
I will
this is
make
Randy.
the motion.
I'm going to throw out a motion to extend the deadline to November 1st, 2017.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Don't need a second.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Don't need a second on that. So we have a motion to extend the application deadline to November 1st. We will now take a vote on that.
Alabama?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Arizona? Arkansas?
Yes.
Colorado? Connecticut?
Yes.
Delaware?
So this is going to come the same every. So you can always.
District of Columbia? Florida?
Florida has the same response. No, we're not in a position to extend any deadlines.
Georgia? Didn't hear that.
Abstain? Yes,
Abstain,
please.
okay. Hawaii? Idaho?
Yes.
Iowa?
This is Adam with Iowa, yes.
Kansas?
No.
Kentucky?
Yes.
Louisiana? Maryland? Massachusetts?
Yes.
Michigan?
And now this is Tommy Algerson.
Minnesota?
Yes.
Missouri? Montana? Nebraska?
Yes.
New Hampshire? New Jersey?
Yes.
New Mexico? North Carolina?
Yes, Richard, this is Ed Lane. Let me had to raise that yes on the prior one as well.
Okay. North Dakota? North Dakota? Didn't hear a vote for North Dakota. Oklahoma?
Yes.
Oregon? Rhode Island? South Carolina? South Dakota? D.
No.
Okay. Texas?
Yes.
Utah?
Yes.
Vermont? Washington? West Virginia?
Abstain.
Okay. Wisconsin? Wisconsin? Okay. I get 14 yes, 3 no, and 2 abstentions. Motion passes.
Okay, so the motion passes to extend the application deadline to November the 1st. Now, due to our first motion, Richard, it sounded like the 30 days from the time that the applicant is given notice that the state has signed the agreement was okay with everyone for registration purposes. So do we need to even change any registration deadline there, or?
Anyway.
I think the first motion can mesh.
Okay, I thought
Okay,
so. I
with the
just wanted to
second
make
one.
sure.
They'll get the 30 days from the notice that the state signed the agreement. That'll set the registration deadline.
Okay, great.
Okay, I can do some stuff in the morning too.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, right next to the Hyatt.
This is Phil Skinner in Idaho. Randy's mainly been spearheading this, but I just want to ask a question for clarification for my own sake, and I think for the sake of some of the people on the call that maybe have been confused. Can you confirm to me, am I understanding correctly? Because this is based off early in the call, some of the public comments said, well, why are you even having the call today? Today's call was to make one decision, whether or not to extend the time frame for people to participate in this amnesty program. Today's call had nothing to do with deciding whether or not states would decide that Amazon's responsible for the tax or an individual is responsible for the tax. If an Amazon marketplace seller has not been collecting sales tax, and as of today says, I don't want to collect the sales tax, and I'm not going to collect the sales tax, and I want nothing to do with your amnesty program, today's decision doesn't change their status at all. They're still in the exact same place and have the exact same exposure if the state should decide that they want to come out and tax them. This extending of the amnesty isn't some deadline that the state said, well, you never had to collect sales tax, but now you have to by November 1st. It's just an amnesty program, and if a seller doesn't want to participate, they don't have to, and today's decision no way changes their status and possible future exposure to a sales tax audit and liability. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
You missed one point on that, though. Please, to just clarify, if you participate in the amnesty program, you're waiving away your rights and having to pay tax going forward. So I think that this is really just a sham.
Well, it's an opportunity, if you choose either way, to say I'm going to wipe out any risk of audit responsibility, or I guess wipe out audit risk for past taxes, because I don't want to.
They're small businesses. They be subject to audit risk. It's not their responsibility looking at law. They shouldn't be subject to audit risk.
From a
either it's in the law or it's not. It's either the law or it's not. Figure it out. It's either the law or it's not. The audit risk, are they Microsoft or are they a mom and pop operation?
Okay.
What are you doing?
Thank you, Bill, for stating that. And yes, that is correct. This committee, does not make the laws in our states. That's done at the legislative level. So any changes there would need to be legislators. But we certainly appreciate everyone joining the call. If there are no other questions regarding the motions that have been made, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
This is Joan Cagle. I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Joan. Hope everyone has a good afternoon.
Big sellers should stay on the line at this
line for registering.
Stay on the line. I think sellers should stay on the line to keep talking about this issue as long as the conference line is open.
Yeah, 420 people signing up for this is a full failure. It's a joke.
I agree.
Listen, I really think it's important.
Our own dialing before they.
Yeah, it's really important for all of you sellers.
Make our own dialing before they
sellers,
start.
you need to go talk to your own state legislators on this. You need to call your local state senator and your local state representative and have a meeting with them. They'll take a meeting with you. You're a small business owner, and sit down with them and explain how much money your state is going to get screwed by if they take this approach. This is an opportunity for your states, all of your states, to have a windfall from Amazon. Amazon's only collecting half of what they should be. And every state, Amazon has nexus with every state now because Amazon owns Whole Foods, so Amazon is in every state. Every state has an Amazon. So even if your state doesn't have a fulfillment center, they can go after Amazon. And I'm telling you, if 5 or 6 states do what South Carolina is doing, Amazon's just going to cave and start collecting because it doesn't cost Amazon anything to collect. And the state should be offering Amazon amnesty. Start collecting December 1st, and we won't go after you. And it doesn't cost Amazon anything.
They just want to not pay it.
Doesn't cost Amazon a penny. The buyers pay the sales tax.
Our problem is that California was bankrupt just for the back taxes, so it doesn't matter if we sign this thing or not. If California comes after us, we're done.
Exactly.
Has anyone explored the risk that any of the states that are participating in the amnesty share information with states like California regarding who participates in the amnesty?
California can go on Amazon and see that you're collecting tax in those states.
They all do. All states have the information sharing agreements, any data they can share across, including the MCC.
We need a contact point for all of us to be able to communicate.
There's tax e-commerce. I'll figure out a way to get it figured out.
Chris McCabe at ecommercechris.com has been a good resource that I've been following.
And I'm the person who's on, this is Paul, who's on Chris's site, and you email me tax with Chris, and Chris can figure out how to.
Yeah.
What site was that?
ecommercechris.com. My email is tax@ecommercechris.com.
Tax@ecommerce.com.
Yeah. And just put MCC call and I'll know where you came from.
Paul, it would be great to get some points that we could go talk to our legislators about so that we're having a common approach and they're hearing the common themes.
Yeah, I don't know if I thought we had I don't know if you're on their list on the e-commerce list, but I thought we had disseminated some bullet points not that long ago. And
no, I thought your bullet points were excellent. I want to the gentleman from the seller from Minnesota really encapsulates a very strong a reason, for why this makes sense to have Amazon do it. It's really convincing to me. It's a no-brainer.
Is there anyone that's on the call that's actually part of the MCC still?
I assume somebody has to be, otherwise wouldn't the host be exited by now?
They probably all just got off because, like they said, this call was just to determine if they're going to extend the deadline or not. It seems like they have no interest in actually resolving the fundamental issue.
Well, that was disappointing. This was for them to do that, and they heard your voice, and hopefully, when they'll hear it. I do know what will do something. I think everyone did a great job communicating today. So.
I think this point that was made about consignment is perfect in relationship to be it Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, any major store. They will extend out their suppliers 90, 120, 180 days plus, but they don't give them a dime, and their product's sitting on their shelf at the expense of the manufacturer of that product.
Right.
It's the same thing going on as what's going on with Amazon.
Right. If Amazon could really get away with it, why wouldn't Walmart do it? Every time they themselves.
Right. The big thing here is that in consignment, these states already have approaches to dealing with consignment sellers, and it's not just consignment's not just with little shops. It's also all these companies that do auctions where they auction, they do these like estate sale auctions, or they do business equipment auctions, or they do other kinds of auctions. And states already have rules on this. And basically, the auctioneer is the seller who's responsible for, and the consignment store is responsible for collecting the tax. And I just, it's pretty clear that this should be the same here, same situation.
The thing to be careful of, Simon, is you don't own the inventory. It's the first. It is the reality. I mean, it's what really happened. So you want to say that's there first because you have to.
This is what's really good. This is what's confusing to me. They're saying that there were 420 applicants so far. When they said that, I did a double check.
They said 280. They think they'll get up to
285. If that's not, guys, that's ridiculous. How are they going to? How are these guys going to? If they can't even process 420 or 280 applications, where's my disconnect? How are they going to come after enforcing this? It doesn't make any sense.
Why are they?
Am I totally off base here or what?
No,
and they seem content with 280.
You guys are all making you guys are making a really good, valid point, except for one thing. What is the reality today? No one has determined that Amazon is a seller. We could all agree upon that. But there's state laws. California has come after my company for back taxes. They said that Amazon reported them to California. Now, whether that's the truth or not, I don't know, or whether they're using that as a scare tactic. But they're going to put us, just California alone is going to put us out of business. So what do we do to...
I hope you email me, because I'd love to know more about my experience in California, tax and e-commerce, Chris. I just...
Paul, you know who I am. We've already been in contact.
Oh, hey, how are you? Sorry.
Fine, thank you. That's okay.
Hey guys, I want to say something. I'm from Canada. I'm a CPA. I know in Seller Central, if you look at the tax policies, Amazon already indicates very clearly that it's a seller's responsibility to collect sales tax. So I think the reason that the state would chase after the seller is because we are smaller and we are easier to be targeted. Amazon is difficult to deal with. It's very difficult. So they target small sellers.
Actually not that
I agree 100%. You're absolutely right. We're low-hanging fruit. We're easy to pick off. We're easy to be intimidated. They can bully the crap out of us, which is, one of these it's, you're a small seller. You get a letter from these guys, it scares the piss out of you. Come on. Amazon's one of the few entities that can fight them.
It's also important that we try to stop calling ourselves sellers, because if we're not sellers, that's just a mental block that we've all have. And I mentioned this when I spoke earlier. We are suppliers or we're consigners, but we aren't selling anything. We're not selling anything any more than if you put your products in and drop ship for them. Amazon controls the catalog. Amazon controls the way it's displayed. Amazon merges your product information with others to display things. Amazon has the right to not sell your items. Amazon controls the form of payment. We have how the customer's going to pay. Okay? Totally controlled by Amazon. Amazon keeps the money. Amazon ships the goods. They're the seller. We are just consigners. We are just suppliers. We're FBA suppliers, or we participate in the FBA network. And with respect to Nexus, these guys are auditors. They think Nexus is so clear. If we have Nexus with all these states, does that mean you have Nexus when you ship something UPS and your items are in their Illinois source facility?
Hey guys, unfortunately, I think Amazon we don't have any bargaining power with Amazon. Okay, they have policies say that we don't have any say in this. It's really just that the law is not in favor of sellers.
Amazon contracts not going to be taxed. You can put lipstick on a supplier relationship and try to pass it off to the retailer, but these states are trained to know how to do it. The fact that they're not, Is it because they don't understand your facts? Do they not understand that you actually have a relationship with any of these people? You don't even know who the lawful solicited customers. You don't even know who they are. It's fascinating to me how there's just such a lack of interest in knowing the facts. And I hope whoever's listening may consider doing it. Do some real research into what it's about. They're concerned. You can't contract your way out of a sales tax obligation, because if you could, every retailer would be doing it. UBC collects on every sale. There's a similar pattern.